Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're going to Masechtas Rosh Hashana daf Tes. We are going to begin 4 lines from the top on Testament Aleph. The Gemara asked the question, how do we know that there is this concept of adding onto Kodesh, which could be referring to Shabbos, could be referring to the Shemitah year? So the Sanya, the pasuk says as follows: "Becharish v'katzer tishbos." The Torah specifically mentions, when it comes to the keeping of Shabbos, that a person is not allowed to plow or harvest. And the question is, why are those the things that are singled out of the Lamites Malachos? So in this Rabbi Kiva Omer Enosarach Loimer Charish v'katzer Shel Shvius, we don't even need to tell us about the Shemitah year. Shahorit Kfar Never Sachol Tizra. The Gomer, we already have a pasuk that tells us you're not allowed to do these things on the Shemitah year. So we don't need it to talk about Shabbos itself. We don't need it to talk about Shvius, because again, that's something which we know also. Elo must be coming to add something. Charish shel erev Shvius and nichas lo Shvius, v'katzer shel Shvius and yoytzu l'moytzu Shvius. Rabbi Kiva says the pasuk is coming to tell you that there's a din of being moisif, to add Mechoil al Kodesh, that even before the Shemitah year a bit, and also after the Shemitah year. Shmuel Eimer says no. It's actually referring to Shabbos itself. It says Rashi V'Ladira Kosev El Inin Shabbos Mecharish Rishos Av Kotzer Rishos. The only things you're allowed to do are harvesting and plowing for yourself. If it's something for yourself, you're not allowed. Yotze Katzir Ha'Eimer Shehu Mitzvah. When it comes to the harvesting of the Omer for Pesach, even if it falls out on Shabbos, you'll have to do it on Shabbos. Says Rashi, that even if you had found on the field, it's already plowed, it was already harvested, that doesn't help. The only thing I'm going to ask you are things that you yourself aren't supposed to do. However, when it comes to the Katzir Omer, Shafil Matzah Katzer Mitzvah Liktzor, even if you find it this way, you have to actually harvest it yourself. It has to be done Lishma. Therefore, obviously, if it's Shabbos, you still have to do it. So it's Deicha. So according to him, how does he know this element of adding Mechal Kodesh, if this is not what he learns out from this pasuk? So Navkalei Medesanya, he learns it out from a different pasuk. It says so it says on Yom Kippur you're supposed to fast. Now it says you're supposed to fast on the 9th, which of course you know Yom Kippur is on the 10th. So Yachol Betisha, you would think it really means the 9th. How about the Leimer Be'erev? You're supposed to wait until the night time. So you have Erev Yachol Mishatachshach. So maybe that means only once the sun sets. You're supposed to already start fasting before Shkia. I only know that there's an element to start fasting a little bit before Shkia on Yom Kippur. How do we know Yom Kippur also extends? That's why you ask a kid, how long is Yom Kippur? You're fasting 24 hours, it's a 25-hour fast. Now, Yom Kippur. Shabbos Menayin. How do we know also in Shabbos we add? Tishbatu. Yomim Tovim Menayin. Shabbatchem. So Haketzad, Kol Machem Sheish Bo Shvus. Anytime there's an element of resting, what does he do with the words as the 9th? Based on the famous drasha, it says we're supposed to afflict our souls and fast on the 9th of Tishrei. It's not true. We fast on the 10th. It's coming to tell you it's a tremendous drasha. Anyone who eats and drinks on the 9th day, and he's doing it because he knows that he has to fast, Mal v'kosav, as we continue to test some at Bay, is the amazing chiddush of this pasuk. Kilusan that she Vasir. It's like he actually fasted the 9th and the 10th. And it makes sense because I'm only eating this amount of food because of Yom Kippur. So therefore, even the Achila is connected to the fast. Okay. Tanubam. Yovel hi. Now, afal pi shelo shomtu, afal pi shelo toku. Even if, let's say, a person did not have the land rest, even though he didn't blow the shofar, you would think even if, let's say, he didn't send the people out, maybe there's no din of working the land, there's no din of resting. Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says that all these other things are ma'akiv in order for the din of Yovel to take place, that we don't work the fields. However, when it comes to not sending away a slave, if you don't send away a slave, that's not ma'akiv. It's still Yovel. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yovel hi apal bi shelo shamtu apal bi shelo shilchu. Even if you didn't actually send the messengers out, even if again shelo shamtu, you didn't do anything to indicate that it's Yovel. Yachal bi shelo taku. Maybe if you didn't blow the shofar, Talmud loimer he. No, that must that's not the case. In other words, when it's still yovel, even if you didn't do these things. But if you didn't blow the shofar, that's a problem. Okay, so again, just to make sure I'm saying this properly, the first shita of Rabbi Yehuda says you would yachal apal yishlo sholchu. So kamash malan, that sending slaves is ma'akiv. This shita is the blowing the shofar that's ma'akiv. V'chi ma'acher shemikra echad marbe mikra echad ma'amit. One pasuk is including, one's exclusive. V'mneimani yoimer yovel hi alpha bi shol shilchoi ve'in yovel el imkin taku. How do we know it's one and not the other? Why do we say one is ma'akiv and they're not? Maybe they're. How do we know? So it says like this: the reason why, according to the Shita, he says that if you didn't send out your slaves, that it's still going to be yovel, alpha bishul shilcho. However, not when it comes to Kia, is because what if there's no slaves? Right? We live in the United States where there's no slaves, so all of a sudden that means there's not going to be a yovel anymore. No. It's actually it's possible there won't be slaves. It's impossible to imagine that there's no shofar that exists. So since a shofar always exists, so that will be ma'akiv if you don't do it. When it comes to the shofar, it's in the basins. The base can do it, so they must do it. However, to say that yovel is totally on an individual, if he's going to send out his slaves, we don't have necessarily the control of that individual. So my devaracher, why does it give a second shot? It's impossible to say, well, there's not. You're saying there's no slaves. It's not possible to say that there's not someone out there. So Zuma Sula based and Zuena Sula based, and therefore it comes up to this second shot. So again, question 14. Matab Rabbi Yosi, the Tola Ikuv, the Kra. So either because the world has to have a shofar somewhere, and also that the kiyah is given over to Beis Din. I can understand according to him why he explains it. El Rabbi Yehuda my taima. He says the opposite. Why would he say? Why does Rabbi Yehuda, who's the first shita, who says Alpha Bi Shlo Shilchu Tamad Omer Hi, so why does he say that the sending of Adam is ma'akiv? So Amar Kra across them to Rabbi Aretz. The pasuk says, "You shall proclaim liberty in the land." The way the pasuk is written, it's written lefanav, not only that which is in front of it, not much more in front of it. Says Rashi, "Miyuta tehi akriyas deror koi." This pasuk is coming to specifically mention the miyat is on sending away slaves, which is mashma that if you don't send out the slaves, then it's a problem. but it's not going on Tekiyah Shofar, which is Lifnei Panav, which is written much before that. That much of a jump we're not going to do in the Pesukim. So therefore, we just learned Mikra Nikra Lefanav, V'lo Lifnei Panav. Now the Kuliyama Dror Lashon Cherus. The word Dror is a language of freedom, which we mentioned in many places. Most recently, Masechtas Be'ah, when we talked about a seaport dror, which we ended up saying a free bird regarding the Isser of Tzad, of trapping. So my mashma, how do we know? The sign in dror el lashon cherus. It means free. Rabbi Yehuda ma lashon dror kimadayer bedayer. Just like a person can go and live anywhere they want. Umoyvel s'chayr b'chol medina, and he can engage in business in all places, in all countries. So this is the element of freedom. Freedom is you can live where you want, and you can practice business transactions freely, which is very interesting. That's how the Gemara views. That's the element of dror. Rav Chia bar Abba, Rav Yochanan, Zude Rav Yehuda, Rav Yosi, Aval Chachamim Oimrim Shalashtin Ma'akvais Bay. All of these elements are ma'akev. Sabri Mikra Nidra Shalfanav Nefanav Lachayrav. Iba Kosav Yoivel. So Yovel seems to exclude, sometimes it's not. Sahu Defil B'chutzart. So it's coming to tell you actually that even in Chutzart there's a din of Yovel. Ibeksiv Ba'aretz. The pasuk says it's Dafkin Eretz Yisrael. No. Hahu B'zman Shenoig Deror Ba'aretz Noig B'chutzart. B'zman Sheinu Noig Ba'aretz Inu Noig B'chutzart. It's basically saying there's a link between Eretz Yisrael and Chutzart. If Yovel is Noig in Eretz Yisrael, then it's Noig in Chutzart. That's what it's coming to tell you. The only time it would be Noig in Chutzart is Dafka if it's Noig in Eretz Yisrael. But if it's not Noig in Eretz Yisrael, then we don't. It's not Noig here either. Okay. Let's continue. Let's just finish this next piece, and we'll see the last questions. Unatia. So our Mishnah, all the way back, said that when it comes to Natiya, which we're going to see has to do with planting and trees of Arla, so it's counted from Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. So Menol and Nechsiv Shoshanu Arelim. It says the din of Arla is for 3 years. Nechsiv Bashana Harbias in the 4th year, which has the din of, at the time of the 4th year, it's mutter, it's net to Rabbi, so you have to bring, similar to like Meiser Sheni, you have to bring it to Yerushalayim. Yo Shana Shana Matishrei. Nechsiv Mereshis Hashana. So just like as we saw in yesterday's daf, so it's Tishrei, so to here. Beligmer Shana Shana Nisan. Nechsev Rishon Hu Lachem L'Chadshei Hashana. So it's no. Done in Shana Sheni Machadashim. Mishana Sheni Machadashim. They ain't done in Shana Sheni Machadashim. Mishana Sheshi Machadashim. As we said this before, we want the words to be more parallel, and therefore we'd rather learn the word Shana to a pasuk which only has the word Shana and not Chadashim in it, and therefore it's coming to tell it's Tishrei and nothing else. Okay, we're going to stop here. Let's see a couple questions. Question TA23. El Devarim Akben B'Yovel. One of the things that Ma'akev, according to one Mandi Oimer Shilach Avadim. According to one Mandi Oimer Tekiyah Shofar. The last opinion, the Chachamim says Shmitas Karkois Shilach Avadim of Tekiyah. Also, when it comes to a person who does not do Shmitas Karkois, doesn't allow his land to rest, according to the Chachamim, they're all Ma'akev. Question TB25, almost an identical question. Eilhin mitzvahs hayovel. These are the mitzvahs of Yovel. Doesn't want to get into too much detail, but it's Tekiyah Shofar, Shulach Avadim, Shmitas Karkos, Shekanu Zemizeh, and Isser Zriya Charisha Kiyotzeba. So the Shmitas Karkos that were purchased from one to the other, and also the last of Isser Zriya Charisha. Obviously, one is not to plant or harvest, just like on Shemitah.